carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to the confirmation of the status of the agenda, and I'll take it that all reports are read. And also just a slight correction there in your minutes. We've got Mr. Andrew Corkle, who is supposed to be representing Sport Waikato. We have Matthew Cooper in his place today. Andrew's wife has just had a baby, so congratulations, Matthew, to pass that on to Andrew. And it also says item 6.1 is actually 5.1. Is everybody happy with that? Have a mover for that? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Church, all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Do we have any disclosures of interest?
Not a disclosure of interest, Mr. Chairman, but Councillor McAnally has just called to say he's having trouble getting in.
Can you stop that? Because I can't.
Okay, then we'll carry on with it, and hopefully he'll get in soon, and he can come in as a late. Here's Councillor Henderson. I see has come in here. We all okay with that? As Councillor Henderson's just come in, so welcome. Right, so we want, first of all, page 4, confirmation of the status of the minutes on the meeting held on Wednesday, the 28th of July. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Sedgwick, Councillor Lynch, all in favour? Aye, hands up, thank you. Against? Carried. Right, moving on to the first reports, 5.1 on page 12. Matthew Cooper, welcome.
Thank you, Eugene.
And I'll hand it over to you to present. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Kia ora koutou, councillors, to Chair Eugene, Mayor Allen, councillors and staff. Thanks for the opportunity. And it's nice to be in level 2. I hope you've all had a pretty safe 2 or 3 weeks. I suppose work hasn't slowed down for you. I just want to introduce, I know he's on here, Shane Brodie. So I'd just like to introduce Shane Brodie to council. Shane is our new Spaces, Places and Planning Manager, so he looks after the region. So Shane, if you could just introduce yourself to council and then pass back to me.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Matthew. Good morning, councillors. I come into the Sport Waikato team in the last 3 months, as Matthew said, Spaces and Places and Planning Manager. My key focus areas will be looking at the regional landscape of the Waikato region in terms of spaces and places, but also at a district level in terms of policies and strategic planning, and then making sure that there's connection across the wider region in terms of the focus of strategy into sport, recreation, and also play. I lead a team of 5. One of them will be working closely with Waikato District Council, being the Regional Connectivity Coordinator. The key focus of that role being obviously connection with the local district user groups, council, consultants, and also any other sporting organisations or groups to ensure that spaces and places across the region, but also across the district, are well utilised. And there's a heavy focus towards the future. A bit about myself, I come from Spaces and Places. I had about 5 years in Melbourne managing aquatic and recreation facilities for YMCA Victoria as an area manager, overseeing staff across a council area over in Melbourne. More recently, in the last few years, I returned to Wellington, and I had a few years in shopping centres, managing spaces and places in terms of shopping centres. So I've got experience in spaces and places, and I'm excited to be back into the sport and recreation space with Sport Waikato, and also into a region that I grew up in and left 15 years ago. So returning to the region, very excited about our way of working and the regional landscape that we have at the moment. So a big part of my role, before I pass back to Matthew, is driving the key outcomes from the Waikato Regional Active Spaces Plan that was endorsed by all councils earlier this year and released in March. So there's some key data and some key insights in terms of that Waikato Regional Active Spaces Plan, and some key regional projects and also district projects that I'm looking forward to working with the councils closely on in the future. So I'll pass back to you, Matthew, and I look forward to meeting you guys all in person.
Thank you, Shane. And but just really before there were a couple of questions that were raised, one from you, Councillor Willerton, around at the last meeting that just related to the drop in sport and related to insights. and also Mr. Green from the Manga Māori representative for Waikato District Council. Just obviously the report taken as read, Council. Challenging times, obviously, in sport and recreation. I spent the majority of yesterday working with all the secondary school principals and the codes around return to play. There's a few codes that are pretty quick to try and get playing this weekend. And it's just the priority at the moment is for our students, and speaking to your principals as well yesterday. The priority is to get back to school on Thursday. And I don't think another weekend's going to hurt the sports system by not playing this weekend. We've had a pretty good run with winter codes this year, but obviously this is all around playoff time. There was winter tournament week that's now been cancelled for secondary schools, and Ames game across the Kaimais has now been cancelled for the second year in a row for a lot of those year 7 and 8 kids. So it's a bit fragile, but I think again, I think the importance of sport and recreation out of this recent lockdown is going to be extremely important, and obviously not just sport but the recreation component. And as I always say to council, areas like the Hakura Matas and all those sort of things are going to be pretty important to people's well-being, and other areas around your district. Just from Mr. Green, in terms of Māori engagement, and I know there was a comment that was made that spoke to Megan about this. There is a really strong focus internally at our organisation about developing our own capability as an organisation. We've been doing quite a bit of work over the last 6 weeks with an organisation called Core Education, and that's actually helping us get better around understanding the Te Reti o Waitangi, tikanga, and all those key things in our organisation, where we've had some really good sessions with this organisation that is helping us, not because we have to, it's actually because the organisation wants to get better and have a better understanding. Externally, we work with Sport New Zealand. Historically, we've had a very strong relationship with Tainui and Maniapoto. But as you will know, that the iwi is wider than that in terms of Hauraki, Rakawa, and also Tūwhare Toa. So with Parakawhi and McLean on our board, we're doing quite a bit of work around a regional strategy for Māori going forward, and have also engaged with Rangata Wilson from TPK. So the organisation is really focused. It may not have come through, but it's a very big component of a lot of the contracts that we have to have a very strong focus on Māori outcomes, and particularly around focusing on areas of deprivation. Shane, do you just want to just go a little bit into the report before we ask for questions from council?
Yeah, mentioned earlier, the report was taken as read, I believe, at the last meeting. Since then, since June, the report was up to 30 June 2021, which was our last contract period. So moving into the new contract time frame from July onwards, we continue to work in the district. Heavily involved in the health and education space at the moment. We've got our health and education team that has recently met with Ngaruawahia Kahui Akos, which involves 7 schools in the district, working with them in a primary and intermediate space, really focusing on recreation curriculum inside the schools at the moment. A lot of that comes out of the Voice of Rangatahi survey that was released earlier in the year, that gave a real regional insights in terms of students, and that the Rangatahi were not enjoying their experiences at school. Across the region, I believe we were behind the New Zealand average in terms of students' experiences inside school, and that they were not enjoying the current curriculum. From that, we a couple of months ago led a health and education seminar day with 140 principals at Clawlands, where we talked about the health and education curriculum inside schools. So that's a big focus of ours at the moment, and especially we're working inside the districts with the Ngaruawahia Kahui Akos. Our early childhood education team is heavily connected with the DHB that are inside the district, and we're working inside 4 kohanga reos at the moment, focusing on PD of physical activity and play inside early childhood centres. and developing quality practice templates for children and what play looks like inside early childhood centres, but also what nutrition looks like as well. So that's our partnership with the DHB in that space at the moment. We continue to offer fundraising support. I think it was highlighted in the report that for the district, the Waikato district, we distributed $225,000 to a handful of organisations in sport and active recreation to enhance the opportunities for rangatahi and tamariki. That work continues, and we've been heavily involved or engaged by various sporting organisation and recreation groups inside the district about ongoing funding through our Te Manawa funding. We've also connected with the Department of Internal Affairs to help us or help sporting organisations to access direct funding. The Department of Internal Affairs have been very supportive in helping some sporting organisations inside the district actually apply for funding. So we continue to be connected with them there. From my space, there's a handful of infrastructure items happening across the district at the moment that I'm involved with, but like I said earlier, my role is real regional focus and looking at the boundaries and how we can get better synergy across the districts, across the region. So I do want to commend council in terms of the investment in the long-term planning process and investment into the likes of cycle and walking infrastructure, because this is heavily highlighted in our insights that cycleways and walking is the way of the future, because it is the top two sports or top two activities across all ages is cycling and walking. So that's just a bit of a lens in terms of what we're doing at the moment. Like I said, heavy focus on insights and heavy focus in health and education at this stage. Just to go a bit further into insights, we are working at the moment in terms of the active New Zealand data that was released in 2018 by Sport New Zealand. We're currently boosting the district and regional data as we speak at the moment, so we should get some very good insights in early 2022 that will be released that will give more district level insights in terms of participation by gender, age, ethnicity for the district. So once we gather those insights, what we recommend is that we work closely with council to update their district sport, active recreation and play plan that was last released in 2017. Following 2017, we've got a lot more insights, so we'll work closely with council in terms of updating that plan. So that will be a key focus of us in the coming months. So we welcome any questions at this stage.
Great. Thank you, Shane, and welcome. And thanks, Matthew. First of all, I don't think that we had received a report. I think Andrew has given us a verbal. So if we can get a copy of that would be good. That is a very good update. And just one thing is, I suppose, or what question I have is probably, there will be difficulty with this lockdown, and there's a number of winter codes that are still, we're just about tapering off to finish, and some of them probably still need to try to complete that and the crossover into the summer code, field spacings, etc. Any difficulty there?
Yeah, we've been driving, Councillor Patterson, we've been driving the season transition work at the moment and been doing work, and we'd be working with your staff on that. Where, for example, basketball have tried to put on a national tournament in Labour weekend, and so we work very closely with School Sport New Zealand to say, no, that's the summer period. We need to have a gap so your staff can make sure that you can prepare your grounds. And so Waikato will be a strong advocate for that, Councillor, to ensure that there is that space for a change between winter and summer. Yep, there have been some semis and that have had to be postponed or had to be cancelled. It's just the way it is. There has to be a break in season.
Yeah, no, definitely. Right, we do have a question from Councillor Church.
Yeah, through the chair. Actually, Councillor Ear's got it first, so I'm happy to wait for her question.
Sorry, Councillor Ear. Okay.
Thank you very much. Look, more so for my own interest rather than council question. Just in respect of the lack of play opportunities as a result of COVID, how do you think that's going to impact on any sports scholarships that might be awarded for tertiary benefit?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know that they would always have that factored in. There's been, Councillor, as I said to you before, we've had quite a good run in terms of performance, throughout the winter season. So we've had a good run in terms of. So I'm sure there'd be certainly enough opportunity, I would hope. And I'm not totally privy, Shane might have a little bit there, but I'm not totally privy to the system that goes around. Like, I keep thinking about the Hillary scholarships at the University of Waikato, councillor, and how that process works. But I would assume that there's been enough identification around opportunity for students that are trying to secure a scholarship at university. So probably haven't answered your question properly, councillor.
No, it's just the timing aligns with probably that selection process, which is unfortunate, and obviously more so for those that are restricted by the level 4 lockdown. But it'll be interesting to see, and if we hear any further comms about that.
I've got a daughter at second year. They seem to be adapting, like I'm sure Waikato District Council have had to do. There seems to be a lot of adapting, and they're still trying to promote that opportunity for students, whether it be if it's sports scholarship or if it's an arts scholarship. So hopefully that system is still in place, that the students. I do feel, councillor, I'm as I say, 19-year-old daughter. It's a tough time. They're not supposed to be with mum and dad at the moment. 19-year-olds. I think they're supposed to be out and about. And at the moment, when Grace has had 3 weeks with her dad, mum and dad, I think today is quite refreshing.
Thank you, Councillor Church.
Thank you, through the chair. I have 2 questions. One's an overall question, and secondly is one for the North Waikato and around those boundaries. So the first one is, I notice it's actually our page 20 from our previous agenda, which is talking about your regional connectivity coordinators for the north, south, west and east.
Yes.
And I was interested in how the decision-making behind how you came up with that split. I actually went into a little bit of detail to just understand, because you got the north is our Waikato District Council, the Waipa and Hamilton City Council is one region.
Correct, yeah.
So on my maths is about 278 to 280,000 people in that cluster. Yeah. The west one, Otorohanga, is 21,000. The south with Taupō and South Waikato is 65,000, and the Thames is 84,000 people. Now, and of course, I guess there's different geographic sizes, but I think I did actually start to go down that rabbit hole of the space and size of some of those. But it seemed to me a huge difference in the split of those regional coordinators to cover in any effective way anything but real top of the line stuff and so just a bit of framework as to how that process of decision making went on and how those can be an equitable split for us all in our district.
Absolutely fair question, councillor. I think in terms of how we, as you know, we transformed from, I think it was 9 down to 4. And it was around trying to really elevate the role of that regional connectivity coordinator. It's not a district coordinator, as you know now, than it used to be. It's a person that needs to be working on really developing relationships and working on the system, the sport and recreation system at a very high level. So to do that, there is a lot of commonality in terms of the three. There's a lot of alignment between Waipa, Hamilton, and Waikato in terms of other aspects. This is not a hands-on role. This is a role that is actually working with a lot of the other organisations to get more activity. So the elements of, say, the southern area there where you've got 2 people, part of that is around, there's a bit of geographic area there too. There is quite high socio issues as well, and I'm not discounting the Waikato as well. I think it's more about that system change and working at that level. Shane, you've obviously now been there for a while in terms of that split. You're running those regional coordinators.
Yeah, like you said, Matthew, it comes down to the need. We had a close look at what were the needs of each council area, what each district areas were and what they were working on together, and where there were some synergies to help inform where those RCCs would be located. Like Matthew said, it comes a lot down to location also. We see this role as working closely, obviously, with the councils. The roles will be working out of the council buildings. So it's looking at where those councils are located in terms of the offices and how close they are to each other. We've got somebody located up in the Hauraki, Matamata Piako and Thames Coromandel area because they live up in that area and they actually work amongst those three council areas. It's where we see the Waikato District, Hamilton, Waipa RCC role. Those council areas are those council buildings are very close to each other. And a key part of being successful in this role is making the connection between those councils and being able to work out of those councils and meet also consultants, user groups in the areas. And a lot of that information comes from key companies that may be located in and around a particular area. So it was more so not looking at the population, it was more so looking at where the location of the councils were, but also what the needs of each council were. Example was the recent sub-regional sports field study that was investment made by Sport NZ, but investment made by Waipa, Hamilton City Council and Waikato District into analysing sport fields. So that was a key example of where those three councils work together. So this is where we see that role as, activating some of those strategies at a sub-boundary, sub-regional level.
Yeah, I guess that's a good segue, Shane, to my second question. I personally am taking this under advisement because I think that Hamilton City has been an urban area and the Waikato District Council, which is primarily still a rural district with a lot of spread communities, as an example. Can't comment on Waipa, are quite different. So I'm going to take that under advisement. And I do notice if the locality of the council buildings is not necessarily a reflection of the true district council. But the segue I've got for that is that research that you spoke about, which was the partnership, which was great, actually didn't take in the North Waikato because it was under counties of Manukau. In fact, I actually explicitly asked that the attachment for the information for the report for the North Waikato be added at least as an attachment to that report. So it's not a true Waikato regional sports field assessment. And that's why I come into the second question as to your understanding of your borders and what you are, because you've got counties Manukau on the north. And there's actually other office buildings that you could come and have your hot desk from, which I notice is very convenient to have them quite close together for Waipa and Ngārawaihi and Hamilton, but actually you're also in the North Waikato, so perhaps understand that area. And also, again, if you're going to look at that research, please just add in the North Waikato and the counties Manukau area because there is a limited understanding and that research does not cover, as it says, the Waikato region. So I look forward, happy to talk to you more about counties and the North Waikato and all of those other DHB borders. You talked about the DHB borders. You know that we've got a level 4 COVID bubble up here, which goes down to south of Mercer and between Mercer and Merry. And again, those disadvantaged communities are equally the same as Ngārawaihi and Huntly. So happy to help you if you want to be more informed in the North Waikato. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great, Councillor. And and again, I mean, we're 6 months into this new way, and I think what you and I know that you always appropriately acknowledge the fact that of the size of the district. We might still have, we might not have this totally right, Councillor. We still at the moment the way we've split this up. So all I'm saying is that we need to give this time at the moment, knowing that we're working at that higher level. But we also need to listen to our councillors as well to say, well, look, maybe we do have to maybe we might have to look at that. At the moment, I back this, but I want to give it time, just to give it a bit more time.
Yeah, well, actually, I disagree with you quite strongly, I guess, on this, Matthew, because you've been around a long time. My understanding is that some of that your senior decision-making team are still long-term, and even you refer back to the 2017 recreational facilities where it highlighted the walking and as an outdoor recreational spaces, what highlighted that. I spent quite a lot of time on that around the district and doing that. So a lot of the information that you're working on and that you're now updating, which is going to take another 6 months or so from early 2020, is based on a lot of information that should already be in your system. So I guess that's what I call it, making sure that the intellectual property from the past is kept and collected and passed on like a football.
Yep, and that football has changed now. So our intellectual property and the way that we used to do things is quite different now. We are an influencer, we're not a deliverer. And so the football's changed a bit, Jackie. So, but I do. I think what I want to do is make sure that Shane and I come have a conversation with you.
All right, thank you. Good points, Councillor Church. Before we move on, just a correction from me. Disregard sending us a report. This is discussions on the previous report that was presented. So, and an update. So, yeah, disregard that, Matthew. We do have another question from Chris. Councillor Wallerton, sorry.
No, that's all good. Yeah, it's probably that. My question was alluding along the same way that I asked earlier. It was just how the new system is actually working, and you just sort of touched on it, and that was along the same point, saying that, and I've asked it before, the respect that we're the size of the district and only having the one person, but that's obviously been covered now. And then my second point that I was sort of heading towards is that Waitangi is currently in the situation they're looking for a new hub, and they've just been struggling to get information and getting someone to help. But I believe that will be rectified with the new role that's come in, and how Sean's sort of going to take that up. So I probably look forward to meeting him in the future. So just to cover that off as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks, Councillor. And just to give you an update, I have been engaged by the community hall there. I have provided some information with them. So I think the connection now is to work closely with council and that community group just to see what the next stages are. But appreciate your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. If we have no further questions, I can't see anybody with the raised hand. So I'll thank you, Matthew and Shane. And Shane, welcome, and we do look forward for staff and councillors working closely with you to get through some of these issues that we have. And also, Matthew, as you know, Andrew worked with us quite some time, so please pass on our congratulations to him and his family on behalf of all of us.
And thank you, Councillor Patterson. I just wanted to let you know that we are losing Andrew.
Right.
I'm not sure if you knew that, Council, but he's just landed a new role with Sport New Zealand, so he stays in the sport and recreation system. Andrew's obviously had a wonderful time at Waikato District Council. Then I snaffled him from you at council and had a wonderful 5 years with him, and now he's just been the new national partnership manager for Sport New Zealand. So it's a great journey for Andrew, and so I will pass on. And also, more importantly, he's now got a little daughter, and Ashley Rose. So he's got the 2 sons and a daughter. Council, I just wanted to again finally thank you through you, Councillor Patterson. I just want to thank you again. As Shane mentioned, your commitment in the long-term plan to sport and recreation is acknowledged by Sport Waikato. And again, we thank you as always for your support. And we always know that we've got an obligation, and that came through today, which is great. So I always appreciate those comments.
Great. Thank you very much.
Cool. Okay.
Good day.
Thanks
a lot.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to page 13, item 5.2. Service delivery report, and we have Paul to present that. Paul McPherson.
Yep.
Morning.
Morning. I'll take the report as being read and happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Wallerton.
Yes, it's just referring to the Horsham Downs Link Road. I'm not sure if you're aware, there's been a petition over that issue, and yeah, so I'm just wondering how we can move that forward, and just a discussion on that, please, if you're aware of it.
So I'm not sure what the issue was. I understand the land access has been resolved. We've got access to the link land now. So.
Yeah, no, the petition was, I've been fortunate enough to be able to read it, was in respect that it was, the community was informed that it was going to be a roundabout, and they've just found out it's now going to be a T intersection, and so there's some huge safety concerns because they don't want to be in a situation like it was at Thomas Road, where all of a sudden we put it in, a whole lot of accidents. Some locals, unfortunately, will be involved in that, and then we have to go and spend a whole lot of money and turn it into a roundabout. So they were sort of hoping that some of the costs could be looking at the intersection, that the roundabout was put in at River Road and Horatu Road, and just whether an intersection of that size would be similar to the T intersection. And so, so hopefully at some point that's going to come before council. But I see Roger's got hopefully some information on it.
Yep. Morning, councillors. So Gavin Iron received that petition, and ultimately, as Councillor Woollerton has correctly identified, a number of the local residents have respectfully requested a review of our decision to go for a T intersection instead of a roundabout. I think Stephen Pollard did actually, he's the person's name on the bottom of the petition. He actually presented to us in the LTP, if I remember correctly, raising that same issue. Now, ultimately, Ross has got some comments about the journey we've been on from the transition from a roundabout to a T intersection and the reasons why, the safety issues, the future proofing of it. So if I could just hand over to Ross just to explain that. Now, the reason I want to deal with it now, ultimately the petition needs to come to council in a formal way. However, we're due to start works at the beginning of October. That's only 3 odd weeks away. So we need to be very clear on the direction we're heading here. And so if Ross can explain the situation, and then we can gauge from the councillors whether there is any intention of changing course here, because if it does, we would have to do some pretty meaningful discussions with contractors who are already set up. It will delay the project, it'll increase cost, etc., etc. We would need to know that now before we bring the formal petition to council. So if I can just hand over to Ross, he can tell you a bit more about that decision-making process.
So originally, when that project came to council, it was obvious that we didn't have sufficient funds to build the version that NZTA was suggesting in an early planning stage. So the cost was about 3 times the cost of what we're currently doing. And that was a combination, I guess, of a number of things. The roundabout was one part of that, but also the design per se. There were some options maybe to do things a little bit differently. So we engaged the same designers that did that concept work for NZTA when the roundabout was looked at, and we talked about with them about other safe options, and the T intersection was the option that came up as being still safe but much more affordable than what was originally planned. Now, staff in the end take their advice from designers and safety and transportation people, and they help us to make those decisions. Is what's being proposed safe or not? And the design itself was subject to an independent safety audit done by a group completely independent of staff and the designers, and they concluded that what was proposed would be safe for, I think, around they're working on traffic volumes up until 2040 from memory, in that sort of a range, so the next 20 years, at a substantially lower cost than the installation of a roundabout. Obviously, what else can I say in that regard? I think that pretty much covers it. I think sometimes across the district, we have groups that would like a particular solution in a particular place, but we have to sort of cut our cloth to suit our income effectively. And I think this is just one of those cases. There are probably other areas around the district that, if we looked at it, from a global sense, where that money might be better spent rather than putting a roundabout in there. So that's that's the sort of decision making that staff are involved in all the time, and no one from from no one in the staff side of things is obviously wanting to do anything that's unsafe. So the information that we've been provided is very clear that the solution that's being proposed is actually safe.
Is one of the things is the traffic modelling sort of not there, and we just got informed Monday that Horsham Downs is going to be a new growth node. So it's just, yeah, I just wonder if there's any chance for the rest of councillors we can revisit it, because the growth and the traffic volumes onto the motorway, I don't think anyone can predict, and I just think we've got it wrong for the flows. But anyway, that's, yeah.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Smith next, but just to add to Ross's comments, I do recall seeing a previous report that had the traffic modelling and the safety report, and it did have, it had said it was the T intersection was sufficient till 2041. Ross, that's one I'd seen previously. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you. I have total sympathy for the petition and the submission that was made at the long-term plan hearings. Whilst I hear the word safe being used, and no disrespect to any of our team, there is safe and there is safer. And when it's maybe 9 years ago when I was chair of roading, this was first planned, and the volume of traffic, etc., that Hamilton Northeast is growing, and it's where the growth is going to go and come into our district with HT, whatever it is, 1 or 2. So what's affordable and what should be done are two different questions. But the reality is, in 20 years' time, the cost of that roundabout will be exponentially higher than what it will be now. So to me, I think we are short-sighted, and I would absolutely support this being revisited and done now rather than in 20 years' time. As again, I'll use the phrase that I've picked up the bodies that you guys haven't, and I know what the distress in that to the community that it causes. People make mistakes, where a roundabout will reduce that. And whilst I respect traffic modelers and all that at times, sometimes they just don't put a practical head to it. Thank you.
Do we have any further comments on this? Councillor Church?
I got a few things.
Sorry, Mayor Allen?
Yeah, look,
Councillor Church next.
when it comes down to this sort of thing, you've got to park the emotional side of it. I'm sorry, Councillor Willerton, I've been around too long to see too much emotion in that. I look around our network, and I can tell you we've got roads that should have better intersections and should have roundabouts and should have a whole lot of things that they haven't got. This is one that's driven out of probably people who believe and think that their emotion is more important than the reality. And I always take advice from professionals. And, it's no different. You as a farmer take advice from your professionals that advise you in your farming business. As a council, we've got to take advice from professionals that actually advise us around road safety and all that sort of thing. And I get that, but what are you prepared to, as a council, to give up if the bill comes back at an additional $1 million? What are you prepared to give up? You're prepared to give something up, your swings, your slides, and everything else that goes with it. So just think of that as well. I think if traffic modelling is telling us it's safe, it's been independently audited, and more importantly, the traffic modelling just doesn't affect until for another 20 years. And sorry, councillor, I haven't heard of Horsham Downs becoming a growth node yet. So obviously you're running on a different program to me. There may be a little bit of growth, but it ain't a growth node as such as what we recognise. It's not another community of town or anything like that. So I think you just all need to park the emotional side of this and look at reality and think it in that light. And there's nothing wrong with people standing up with a petition and all that sort of thing. It's quite all right, quite accepting of that. No problem at all. People should do. They've got concerns. But we've got to weigh up reality against emotion. And this is about reality.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Councillor Church.
Yes, thank you through your Chair, Mr. Chair. I agree with what the Mayor's saying, and I guess the only thing I'd add in, what's the opportunity cost of this roundabout going there if it's a lot more expensive than the T intersection, particularly with that expert opinion? Is what else would we, if we were serious about it, what else would we have to take off our budget or hold back, and what those effects. I think we should always have that in mind as well. But I do think that it's important, because I personally think that roundabouts are really effective. There's a lot of them around where I am at. And it's just going back to the point that Mayor Allen made, is that perhaps, you've identified, or Roding have identified, where we do have T-intersections or cross intersections around our district that have high volumes and that potential accidents, where we could plan to on a leading line of, worst down to lowest, actually plan to look at whether it's better to improve another intersection in the future into a roundabout. Because I think that's important, just to be proactive around where are our accidents on intersections, and is there something that we can then budget to make it a lot safer intersection or roundabouts on those worst accident areas.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions on this?
Yes.
Councillor Maguire.
Why I've been so supportive of it, I travel that road every time I come to council and for other reasons, and it's situated in a spot where it's got a rise and a drop off either side of it, where the visibility is not good. It's got a couple of little hills either side where it comes up from Resolution Drive and the Expressway, and that's why I've always been pushed the roundabout, because I believe the visibility is not good. It won't give people, a lot of people, much time to see a car pulling out or the people pulling out. So I don't know how you're going to make it really safe, but I still believe that I'm not basing it on emotions. I'm basing it on reality and of what's there, and that's where I come from on that, and I support us revisiting the roundabout.
Before, I might just go back to Roger, but just before I say that this is what, if we flip this over today, it's going to have significant implications going forward, as in delays in the projects and costs to it anyway. I do not know the difference between the cost to a roundabout and a T intersection. I do not know that, but I think it's not just $1 million. I think it's millions of dollars. But I'll go back to Roger, who might be able to clarify some of that.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. Look, ultimately, I can understand why the community are passionate about this. NZTA ran a pretty proactive engagement campaign asking the community what they wanted, and ultimately delivered a design which met as many needs as they could. So expectations were built up. From my point of view, the thing that went wrong is NZTA significantly undervalued the cost of the works. And that's why when the project was passed to us, we basically came up with a mismatch between what the expectation had been set, the budget that had been provided, and what we could actually do. That wasn't a good situation for all of us. Ultimately, as you all know, we've been talking about this for probably a couple of years now, as the story's been unfolding. We've got to the point where even through our last LTP cycle, we tried to weigh up what we could do across our roading network to best effect, and we landed on this being the best compromise. So look, I think what I'm hearing is the community have a valid point. Unfortunately, we don't have the money available to significantly change things. I guess I can reassure you to say that the corridor is future-proof, so it can, a roundabout can be put on the land that's been acquired in future as we need to. Ultimately, that would require more funding, particularly from NZTA. We all know they're skint at the moment. They've just released their the various amounts they're going to give councils, and we're trying to understand what that actually means for our program, and we will give you an update on that. But ultimately, there isn't a lot of money, as has been kind of rightly said. We will have to lose things if we wanted to change our mind at this point, and we are talking in millions of dollars here. And ultimately, we would have to go and get a new design done. We'd have to change the contract we've entered into with our contractor, and it would delay the start even further. So the steer I'm hearing from the councillors, correct me if I'm wrong, is at the moment we're staying the course. and we're going to try 1st of October to actually build a T intersection. We do need to bring the petition to council formally to acknowledge it and to respond to those residents. But ultimately, that's what I'm hearing. Ross, can you tell us anything more about the costings? Like, what are we talking? Is it a couple of million or?
Yes, I would say, given that we've awarded a contract, so it'll be a variation to an existing contract, the minimum cost will be sometime in the region of $1.5 to $2 million. And of course, with the NZTA not having much funding, we might end up funding that at 100% rather than the 50% subsidy that we've currently got. And in addition to that, if you want to get money out of NZTA, you have to apply, you have to put forward a rationale for doing things in a different way. We have put forward to them the details regarding the intersection that's we're proposing, and so a late change again would be a difficult process for us to go through with NZTA. I'm feeling that they might be pretty reluctant to be part of that change. And the other aspect is that we do have a contractor that is programmed to start on the 1st of October, and changing the plans at this late stage would be major disruption. It really would. I mean, nothing's impossible, right? Nothing's impossible, but it's potential for the project for really going off the rails. And I think we're all certainly hoping that our section can be completed at the same time as the expressway. And I think it would put that at risk, most certainly.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross. I'll just take another question from Councillor Beck.
Thank you. Yeah, look, that's really useful, Roger and Ross, and I think it clarifies issues for us. If we're getting into a situation where we're picking up 100% because we're now not far rate eligible, I guess, by the very process, and we're also potentially incurring some penalties under the existing contracts because of delays that are not, at the fault of the contractor. We are really starting to push the envelope. And I'll take a slightly different road, Councillor Maguire, to you, based on where I start from. So I tend to go 1B, and I'm just really conscious. I don't go through the centre section, but I'm really conscious I go through another couple of intersections which are, I think, rated as the most dangerous in our entire district that we'll be asked to look at shortly. The one over the railway line and through Martangi Village and so on. There's some really bad intersections there with that are not fit for purpose now, let alone future proof. So I would really struggle to support a change of tack on this on the roundabout.
Thank you. Look, Councillor Watson, I do understand where you're coming from. I do see it like in our district in Ngāruahi here, there's been calls for lots of things and roundabouts on the end of River Road and Great South Road, etc., and some of the safety issues around town. And like this as well, we just in the past have just not been able to do it, and funding and growth models don't fit it as well. The petition does have to come before committee to council to be acknowledged. We've had discussions on this many a times in the times I've been in here, and we've all come back each time on the T intersection. So, and with the modelling and independent modelling that's been put in front of us, you employ professionals to give you advice, and I think that's where we need to land at the moment. Is there any big sway for a different view on this? Nobody? I don't see anybody. So if that's the case, I think Roger, you had read it as is and taken it as you said it before, and I think we need to move on with this and continue with the rest of this report from Paul.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions to Paul on the service delivery report? Councillor Church.
Yeah, I'll do it offline, but I just want to let Tony Whitaker which is really great. Come to Pocono Community Committee this week. So just catch up around the planning around that early next week. But I'll send you an email and see if we can organise a Zoom with the councillors. So that's all.
Anything else for Paul? All right. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Paul. I think we just had a good discussion there. And I'd just like to move on. We'll take that report as read as we did at the start of the meeting. So we'll move on to page 20, item 5.3, which is just receiving the Regional Transport Committee's minutes. So any comments that I can help with there? We'll take it as read. Councillor Eyre.
Thank you. I just wanted to make 2 points really on page 24 in respect of the road safety report. We have a request, obviously, by one of the members to identify the speed limits and estimate the speed of the vehicle in a crash. Can I also suggest probably information that would benefit those learnings would also be the condition of the road surface as well? So that's just one comment. A second comment is also around point 7 about the rural network. Now, I do have a problem with rural roads being targeted and an assumption that those are rural drivers. I would hazard a guess that our driving licensing doesn't equip many drivers, urban drivers, to be driving on rural roads. So I think you'll probably find just something to point out that a lot of the crashes are probably not necessarily from rural residents. They will be from urban people ill-equipped at driving on rural roads. So I think that needs to be pointed out.
Yeah, and it definitely has in the past. There is a number of councillors on the RTC committee that have rural in their district, and that point definitely gets pointed out quite regularly.
Thank you, good to hear.
That actually particular. Councillor Willerton.
Yeah, just a brief point. Page 23, talking about Kiwi Rail update, and an F, it's talking about funding and how that should be coming out of talking about Waka Kotahi should be managing it. And just a point is only if more money is going to be allocated is probably the big thing. Otherwise, it's you don't want to be a shrinking pool for roading. And it was good to see that they're talking about motorways going through and then giving efficiencies and to climate change, meaning that be able to travel quicker. So that was a good point. And then my final point, talking about similar to what Councillor Eyre was saying, regional safety. Point 8 was talking about older drivers' licences and ability to limit drivers in particular reason. I didn't quite understand that, but yeah, just something to be aware of. No, thank you very much. Interesting reading.
Yeah, just to that point, with older drivers, the discussion was around what can Waka Kotahi do about the licensing of older drivers when in some cases they shouldn't be on the road, but that's not our Waka Kotahi mandate. It's your doctor or somebody like that changes that for them. So that's where that comment was. So thanks, Councillor Willerton.
Yeah, and it's just not all people that are older
absolutely
become unable to drive, and that's just the point I was trying to prove there. Some can, some can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Allen.
Yeah, look, I just want to support Councillor Eyre's comments. This is one that's, as long as I've been around, police and a lot of people have the perception that it's rural people driving on rural roads. I'd say the majority of those people are people that don't know the roads. I've got several kilometres of road frontage, and every vehicle I've pulled out in the last 45 years has been an out-of-towner, I would call them. Somebody who doesn't know the road, not driving to the conditions and all that, but they seem to point the finger at the locals, and it's not the locals. It's people that don't know country roads. They are different to other parts of the world and even parts of New Zealand. And, once you've learnt to drive on them, there's nothing wrong with them. You might get annoyed a bit at times because they're a bit windy, especially our roads sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's normally people that are not local are the ones that go through the fences. I've had a lot of people rolled over in places which I could never understand how the hell they ever did it, but that's what actually happens.
Wrong. Yeah, correct. Councillor Eyre, did you have another question?
Yeah, no, can I just add to that? Thank you for your support on that, Mayor Allen. But just my query around driver licensing, has it ever raised under this forum, the road safety report, about how our driver's licensing actually doesn't equip people to actually be, dealing with matters of skids, all of that sort of stuff? Is that where this is raised?
Yes, and it has been raised in the past about whether the licence should require or mandate that you have a defensive driving course. Look, I'm happy to follow this up again to see if that's what discussions or where that's taken. But yeah, that's probably as much as I could update you on that at the stage.
Thank you. But probably a more efficient type of defensive driving course than what they currently run.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you. Just on this point, and I don't know whether Jackie sees it, but in my time in courts and now sitting on the bench, the reality is a lot of people can't afford to get a driver's license. And so by saying they attend drivers, defensive driving and all these other things, we're putting up barriers to a lot of people, and it's better to get them into a system which is more cost effective to get them to skills. So if we're going to get them to do all these courses, we actually have to provide a lower cost mechanism to achieve that, because I'd rather have safe people driving at me, coming the other way, separated by, in some cases, no line on a rural metal road, in other cases, a 4-inch white line. So it's all very well that we want something on this side, but there's an equal and opposite reaction on the other side that is counterproductive to getting safe drivers and safe vehicles on the road. So be careful what you wish for, because you end up people with no licenses, which is a lot of them out there, and we're putting up barriers to people being able to achieve their ability to drive safely. Thank you.
Absolutely, Councillor Smith. And I mean, that is a problem we've currently got at the moment, even with the affordability of licenses as they are now. So, and the other thing is too, these young ones get a license these days, and some of the power, some of these vehicles that they can jump straight into is far increased on probably what we all learned to drive in. So thank you very much. I will take some of that to the next RTC meeting, some of those questions. So thank you for that. So moving on to page 5.4, page 28, the Norrie Ave walkway. So we have Celeste here. Celeste, welcome, Celeste, from staff here to speak to that.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I will take the report as read. To summarise, Council has received a request for permission to install an underground line and pillar box within the Norrie Avenue walkway in Raglan, and for the electricity line and pillar box to be legally protected with an electricity easement in gross in favour of Well Networks Limited. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, if we have no questions, so there's a recommendation on page 29. Do we, Councillor Smith, you happy to move that? Yep. Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Thompson has a hand up.
Okay, sorry, I can't see everybody. So Councillor Thompson to second that. I'll put that all in favour. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Celeste, with that being a walkway, it would be really good if they, I see in the report there, but that the Wells Networks team get on with that so it's reinstated as soon as possible. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle, page 38, 5.5, another easement for Te Kowhara for the wastewater treatment plant. Page 38, Michelle.
Right. Good morning, everybody. I will take the report as read. This relates to another easement for power over the Te Kowhara wastewater treatment plant. Once the area that will be subject to the easement will be defined by survey, and the costs are going to be met as part of the project costs. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
No questions on this. I think it's pretty straightforward as well. Do I have
So
a move?
moved.
So move, Mary Ellen. The seconder, Councillor Sedgwick. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Right, item 5.6. Michelle again.
Okay,
Page
so
46.
it's the day for easements. This relates to a request from the Horsham Downs Village Trust, who are building a church adjacent to the school and hall, for a right-of-way easement over the hall reserve. It is detrimental to the reserve and its users, but there's a suggestion that there's a wider public benefit. But in lieu of compensation, it's suggested that in exchange for granting the easement, that the public be allowed, the users of the hall and the general public be allowed to use the church parking facilities. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mary Ellen.
Yeah, look, I've got a number of questions here for you, Michelle. When I went through this morning, firstly, I'm looking at the schematics or the picture, the overlay here on page 57. So have the church, firstly, my first question, have the church purchased the 2 houses on Martin Lane?
Yes, they have.
Okay, that solves that question. The second question is, I take from what I'm seeing here on this drawing, that the entry to this car park is obviously through the existing car park, and that's why they need the easement to the land in behind, correct? Is that correct, Michelle?
Michelle, are you frozen?
Yeah, frozen.
The final points to the final entry points to the one where the houses are. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now, Michelle. Look, I'll put my questions again. So the parking area or the reserve area between the church and the hall.
Yes.
That area through there is the entry to these car parks, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Look, my one concern here, when I look at this car parks at 362 car parks initially, up to that, and an entry through a narrow area, and it just concerns me that much traffic moving in that narrow area. I don't know whether that's the best point. If there was only a dozen or so cars in behind, but 362 and potentially a hell of a lot more than that, that worries me a little bit.
There'll be an entry to the car park on the northern side, but my understanding is that that will feed the northern or the upper car parks. But I accept your comment that there will be a significant volume of traffic passing through there when the car park's in peak use.
So the car parks that are currently identified in front of both the church and the hall in that reserved area, I'm assuming they're going to stay?
Some of the car parks in the hall reserve will stay, but some will be lost due to the configuration of the entranceway.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, no, it just goes back to my concern. People backing out into an area that could be quite congested if there's an event on there. I know it's a low speed area. It just concerns me around that degree of movement in there, and that being the only entry point in there through there. Especially, 362 car parks. That's a lot of vehicle movements through a skinny alleyway, effectively.
Mm.
All right, that's only my comments.
Yep. Any other comments or questions for Michelle? Councillor Willerton? And then Councillor Smith.
I'm probably in support of it, and it's also an overflow car park for the hall and for if ever that area is turned into a reserve further down that we've talked about. They're not able to come off. There's a picture of a roundabout there, funnily enough, but they're not able to come off the Resolution Drive, and it's sort of like a one-way system where they can go out and go around. So I'm relatively comfortable with what's proposed. With the situation in there. There's plenty of car parks, and it's also they're able to give their own car parks for the good of the area, and so it's a win-win for the community as I'm looking at it. Thank you.
Are you happy to move that, Councillor Wilson?
Yes, definitely happy to move it.
Thank
I
you.
just make one comment as Councillor Wellington, accepting that level of unsafety is acceptable compared to what we were talking about before.
I wouldn't say it's safety; it's also a speed issue. Because it's there's room there. I understand where you're coming from, and it's in the corner, so it's how safe as any car park, and that's what it comes down to.
The same as how safe as any intersection. I'm only pulling your chain, Councillor.
I'll stop there because I'll end up with a blood nose.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
The only thing I would say is I just ask staff to just take on board that issue of vehicles moving through there. I just don't know whether it's actually worth even maintaining those car parks outside the hall. I'm just thinking of the safety aspect of this. I don't have a problem with it overall. It sort of screamed to me around safety with kids running around out there in front of a hall like that, and that many vehicles potentially driving through there.
Yep. Good comment.
Okay.
Councillor Smith.
Two issues. Firstly, is there going to be an easement in favour of the council to make that car park a public car park in perpetuity, so that its access to it is protected? That's first question. Then the second one.
So in answer to your first question, yes, that is the intention, that it will be protected by easement.
Okay, without that I wouldn't support it. And secondly, is there any chance to get a dog leg off the roundabout into that car park? And that would overcome the whole issue in time. Not looking for it to be done right now, but is there any scope that could be investigated to get a leg off that roundabout into the car park?
There's definitely the scope for the discussion.
Yeah, maybe that could be passed on to transport in some way, Ross or his team. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Do any other comments or have a second?
Yeah.
Councillor Maguire.
Yeah, I excuse me, I have difficulty supporting this. As the Mayor said, there's a huge volume of cars going through that car park, and I will struggle to support it at this stage, unless we can get other access. It's yeah, no, I won't support it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Smith has come up with another option that can be looked at, going forward as well, for access into that car park. So do I have anybody that will second the recommendation, please? Councillor Gibb, happy to second that. Or do you have a question? Yep.
No, happy to second that. And just a point that initially I'm expecting the volume of cars will be on their Sunday church services where the school won't be open. But I do take on board the points, and perhaps some discussion with the trust or whoever it is that's building the car park about the markings on the road coming through the hall car park, to keep those, a bit like a road, left on the left. Yeah. So anyway, I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Michelle, I'm sure you'll take those points into the discussions with the trust or the people involved. Thank you. So I'll put that to the vote. Nominate, move in a seconder.
So division, sir?
Pardon?
Can we ask her for a division, please?
Okay, then we'll ask for division. All right, let's go. Right, I'll have to work from the screen here. So we will.
We've got democracy.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yeah,
okay.
Democracy do it.
Let democracy call it.
Yep. Okay, so I'll just start with the beginning. Councillor Patterson.
In favour.
Councillor Eyre.
In favour.
His Worship.
In favour.
Councillor Beck.
In favour.
Councillor Church.
In favour.
Councillor Gibb. Oh.
In favour.
Councillor Henderson.
In favour.
Councillor Lynch.
In favour.
Councillor Maguire.
You're on mute, Councillor Maguire.
Oh, maybe try again, Councillor Maguire.
Up or down? You're muted,
Councillor
Bob.
Maguire, you're on mute.
No, I was staying from voting. I won't vote for it. I won't vote against it.
Councillor McAnally.
In favour.
Councillor Cedric.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
I'm abstaining because I'm not sure that I'm in favour of it.
Councillor Thompson.
In favour.
And Councillor Wallerton.
In favour.
So there were 2 abstentions there. The rest were in favour.
All right. So carried. Thank you very much. Right, moving on to item 5.7. This is another easement one. So there's a stormwater discharge council reserve. So Michelle.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. At the time of writing, the report proposed that as there was an alternative, there was considered to be alternative engineering options. The report recommended that the option of using the flour mill site not be pursued. But since the time of writing, Council's engineering and growth and analytics team have identified that the flour mill site may only be the viable option and have therefore requested that the option that's shown in as option 1 on page 63 is the option that's put forward for your consideration today. I understand that Will is available today and could answer any of those technical aspects about the change that you might have.
Thanks. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I am not prepared to entertain any change unless we have a report and I can understand it. I'm no disrespect there, Michelle. This seemed quite pointed and reasoned, and then to say that now it is the only option. The council hasn't caused the problem. It's the developer who is exacerbating the issue and needs to find a solution. And I would like to consider that the material. So I would ask this decision to be delayed and we be provided with the material, please. Thank you.
Will, are you here? Do you want to make a comment on that, please?
Yes, I can. So as Michelle's pointed out, the logical path 3 or 4 weeks ago was as is laid out. We have some options that were considered by CKL on our behalf, and then they proposed to charge us more than we probably were prepared to pay for a report. They have sent an email which sort of summarises the most viable option being the utilisation of Galbraith. So we can either share that with you soon after this, or consider revising the report and bringing it back. I suppose in the interest of keeping the process moving for ourselves and the developer, we could trust that that's there, but I can package it together and share it.
Okay then.
I could share on my screen, if you like, the 6 options that were considered. Or is that a little bit too much detail?
No, we'll just wait there for a minute. Well, I'll just Councillor Mary Ellen, did you have a comment?
Yeah, look, well, when I look at this, probably 2 questions spring to mind. Is this the most practical and the most common sense way, or is this just the cheapest way for the developer? Because what worries me is developers will always look at the cheapest option and come to us with their begging bowl out and say that this is the most practical or cheapest option for them. What is the best outcome? I'm probably a little bit reluctant to just run a wastewater not a wastewater, stormwater line down through the mill site, unless it is the only option.
Yeah, perhaps I could share this through you, Mr. Chair, a map that I've got here.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I'm actually on the same page as Councillor Smith on this. I think we're in danger of making a bad decision, or perhaps making a less than ideal decision through the process of information being presented sort of on the fly. And whilst I appreciate that that Will and Michelle will be well across, whatever the situation is now, it has literally been presented to us on the go, and that inherently just makes for a bad process, and therefore could threaten the quality of the outcome. So I'm a bit reluctant to start sharing detail now and making a decision now.
Okay, then look, hey, I'm happy with Councillor Smith's recommendation on this, and also yours, Councillor Beck. I did have concerns with this, and I did contact Will just early in the week and to clear that up. And so probably, I'd probably followed that up for the concern that I'd had regarding that. I'm pretty familiar with that area. But I think it's fair that we haven't got all of that information in front of us. So I think we need to bring this to another meeting. Is that okay with that, Will, to bring a report to another meeting?
I think through you, Mr. Chair, I think we need those options on the table. So I think you've had 3 speakers have all had hesitation about this. I suggest we actually bring back a report that actually offers up the options and what is probably the best option, not necessarily the cheapest option.
Yeah, and I think that is the case is in this situation is where this is one option which covers off part of that catchment, and whether that we need a bigger capacity option, or whether we have 2 types of stormwater systems running through there. So I think we'll leave it. Councillor Smith.
So you can either take a recommendation from to move it to the next meeting, or you can exercise your chair's right, I think, and just withdraw it and ask for the report to come back. So either way, if you want to move, I'm happy.
Probably what I would do, Mr. Chair, is just receive the report and request for further information. Leave it at that.
Okay, and I'm happy to do that. Matt, have you got that?
Yeah.
Happy to receive the report. Is everybody happy with that? Right. Thank you very much. Right.
Eugene?
Yes, Roger?
Just a question for you. Just in the interest of keeping this moving, would the council or would the councillors be prepared to receive a report at the council meeting at the end of this month rather than 6 weeks' time?
Yeah.
Are you asking the mayor if he'll receive a report, Roger?
Absolutely, sir.
It was in the back of my mind, in the interest of keeping things moving. I don't want to slow it up either. So I was happy to do that. I was going to perhaps suggest we do that
at our next council meeting.
As long as the team can bring the enough data to make sense and not do another on the fly job.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I believe that there is the data there, but it hasn't been put in front of us in enough time. So happy to do that. Well, you can bring that to the next council meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Right, moving on to item 5.8. This is proposed stopping of Unthorn Road, Mangata Whare. And Celeste.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will take the report as read. Council, to summarise, Council has received a request for a portion of unformed road to be stopped and transferred for amalgamation. The portion of unformed road proposed to be stopped has historically been fenced into and not used by the public, and it does not form part of the maintained roading network. Happy to answer any questions.
So moved, sir.
Yep. Councillor Sedgwick.
Thank you very much. Just as a matter of process, has the Walking Access Commission been notified of this? We undertook to advise them of any roads, unformed road stoppings. I don't have any problem with it, and I'm happy to second it. But part of our process, can we make sure that that's always done? Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Sedgwick, good point. I did get a call from Felicity Borough from the Walking Commission, who just highlighted that previously they'd been sent a report for stopping of roads, and this one had just not quite, and probably with the change of Nicholas Wells leaving, and so I've had a discussion with Roger about that, and that's back on the items when the road stopping's forward. But the Walking Commission's happy with this as it is.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder in that, so I'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Right, I look for a move to move us into public excluded. Councillor Willerton and Councillor Thompson, all in favour? Against? Carried. Right, we'll just give us a couple of minutes to just get everybody offline and get the right people in the room. Thank you.